Welcome back. We have been discussing Outlook 2019, the undercurrents of consensus and contradictions, confrontations that the political economy will face in 2019. We have been speaking with Hasib Drabu, economist, former banker and former finance minister of Jammu and Kashmir. We've been speaking with Tarun Ramadurai, professor of financial economics, the Imperial College London, and Suyash Chaudhary, fixed income fund manager from IDFC Mutual Fund. Hasib, you know, the other big consensus that appeared to have broken is giving a direction to the central bank. At the heart of the controversy over the last one quarter has been raiding the Reserve Bank's coffers, its capital. Do you think that that could be an important issue, no matter which government comes? Even the Congress former finance minister, Chidambaram, did not quite attack the use of RBI reserves. Do you think that would play a central role in the emerging politics after the elections?
All right. No, first, coming from you, I mean, particularly to use the word raiding the Reserve Bank, I think is a bit harsh.
Okay.
We have forgotten the kind of times from 50. Yeah, now it's, because the media now builds it up and, raiding the RBI, and that's how it becomes a controversy. I think the larger point is that what is the relationship going to be after the kind of stuff that we have gone through? It's not that Reserve Bank and Government of India have had a great relationship all these years. It is a relationship that's built, it is built in stress into it, because one is a lender, one is a borrower. And the whole question of autonomy we have seen from so many years. I think it's a larger issue, not just about Reserve Bank of India. It's how the union government, the central government is looking at institutions. I think that's a key question that will emerge.
Yes.
More specifically on Reserve Bank of India, yes, I think it is going to go through a phase. I think there are some pluses, some minuses.
No.
The pluses being that so far, I mean, I've also kind of looked at it. Yeah.
If I may interrupt, the tradition of not giving a direction to the Reserve Bank has been broken. Now it is much easier for a subsequent government to give such a direction. I will come to Suyash on how the markets will react if, the RBI is directed to do something. But you tell me.
Have been given. No, directions have been given earlier as well. It's not that, but I think the way in which it was conveyed was wrong.
Okay.
But as I was coming to it, I think there are pluses and minuses in this whole relationship now that have emerged. One, I think it's a good thing to have a board that is actually a board. I have also kind of been tracking the Reserve Bank of India. I didn't even know who the board members have been. There was far too much of, lack of that governance within Reserve Bank of India, even as it was forcing banks for governance. The fact that over the years we have moved into an institutionalized setup of an MPC and all that has helped. I think it's come at a wrong time what has happened. But there is need for a board that is an enlightened board, if not an aggressive board, but a board that understands and has a view. That is required. Different points of view, different stakeholders have different needs at different times, and they need to be all put on the table before a final view can be taken by the governor. I am still very much in favor of a governor plus his team-led kind of decision-making in RBI. Central government should exercise respect and restraint in dealing with the Reserve Bank of India. On this specific issue, I don't honestly see it in that light, because the Marigam Committee report had submitted. Now the Jalan Committee will give us a recommendation. And I would imagine that the central government, whichever is enlightened enough to look at it from that perspective.
Very quickly, do you think at least this rising tax to GDP ratio that we expected from GST will materialize this year, 2019?
I'm a big one. I am a big votary of this. I think it will happen. I just hope the technological glitches will kind of subside. If you see, even of today, the compensation account is in a surplus. Barring a few states, most of them have done much better. I do expect GST to provide you the kind of resources that are required, which is why I am taking a view that fiscal deficit will not be a problem.
Okay.
As long as we are able to do two things.
Okay,
if we are able to do the reverse charge mechanism, we should be able to rake in the resources that are required.
Okay.
And one is the RCM is second is don't just abolish the MRP system and put a clean GST. Don't do an MRP and then a GST.
Okay. Now I only want to talk about trends in 2019. If there is a different coalition in the centre, either the BJP in a minority and leading a cantankerous NDA, or a non-BJP coalition. Do you think the GST consensus will continue, or will something give?
Well, yeah, I just hope that GST Council, which is, I think, India's first genuinely federal body, has a certain DNA now. I just hope it continues. I also have been in the council and I saw that the finance minister of Gujarat and Maharashtra would actually go against what the centre wanted many times.
Okay.
Because what they're bothered about is what happens in their state. So far, GST Council has not discussed or taken decisions on party lines.
Okay.
And I do hope that continued. I also have a sneaking suspicion that will continue because states are bothered by their problems rather than the national party or those problems.
No, it's just that the GST Council was born at a time when there was a 335 majority for the ruling party and 57% of Indians lived in BJP-ruled states. Will that consensus continue is a worry I have. But Tarun, I wanted to ask you about geopolitics. We didn't give any time to it. The policeman is abdicating his role. So, you know, if US moves away from Syria, moves away from Iran and from Afghanistan, do you think geopolitics will be a bigger worry than we have seen in the last 2 or 3 years, or 2 or 3 decades?
So I think there are several factors that are quite worrying in this context. I mean, certainly it is the case that we're seeing a pullback from a lot of these regions. We're seeing that the US has changed its sort of historical position, seemingly so. We've seen a lot of turnover in the United States recently, certainly at the highest levels of government.
Yes.
There's the Mueller investigation. You know, there's a whole number of different aspects that need to be looked at. And this just adds to this general picture of uncertainty. Now, my personal view on this is that when you have macroeconomic uncertainty, one of the things that policymakers can do is to find a quiet back road to navigate while the macroeconomic picture is potentially worrying or deteriorating. Put differently, if you can find efficiency savings and if you can find a way to fix some of the nuts and bolts or tighten up the structures that you already have. So this means if you can shore up institutional capital by making sure that you strengthen the current state of your institutions, slashing regulations that are unnecessary and putting others that are in place, making sure that, for example, we had this Household Finance Committee and trying to change, you know, or implement some of those recommendations so that we can fix, say, insurance markets or financial markets, and maybe use technology to improve tax take. You know, things like this. There are more managerial aspects to the way that you manage the economy
than ideological.
That would be the way to navigate in an environment in which you have massive geopolitical uncertainty.
Well, there is a lot of machine learning and AI that is getting used. So hopefully, you know, we will get somewhere in terms of more efficient insurance markets and fund markets. Actually, I have a couple of questions for Suyash, but you have to manage it very quickly, Suyash, in a minute. First of all, do you expect rate cuts or will inflation suddenly surprise? I don't know how, but I think there is such a consensus on low inflation. I'm just afraid that a contra can happen. And secondly, do you think this wall of money that came on, you know, financialization of Indian savings, will that continue or will that give?
So to the first point, I think the composition of inflation changes. You know, core comes down somewhat, and you know the primary food, etc., starts to go up. The average inflation will also move up over the course of the next year, but that would probably still not, eliminate the hope of rate cuts, because you can do with a lower real rate target in a slowing business cycle, and the core assumption here is that globally the business cycle is slowing. So yes, I would account for rate cuts even with slightly higher inflation. Okay. The financialization theme one has to see a little more. You know, the biggest indicator would be that the crowding out phenomenon in India needs to abate. And so long as, we are always falling short of deposits to finance credit, falling short of savings to finance government borrowing, you can't really put too much of hope on, ongoing financialization. I think we need to see more data on that.
Okay. Well, there are plenty of points, challenges and hopes that our panel has put on the table. Growth may not be as good as we expect because of the slowing global environment. We could perhaps still get rate cuts and there could be a potential war on institutions. How the political consensus handles this is going to define the political economy trends of 2019. Tarun Ramdarai, Hasib Rabu and Suyash Chaudhary, thank you very much for joining in what's been a very, very interesting conversation.